Hi everyone, and thank you so much for clicking on this video. I'm Malcolm, and if you enjoy content like this, then please be sure to like and subscribe. Did anyone else feel like during the pandemic they watched way too much TV and yet have nothing to show for it? They love the shows so much and they just want to continue to talk about them, but they have no really way to showcase how much they really care and know about the shows. Well, I certainly do, and I decided to make my own YouTube channel talking about my favorite ones. So today's episode of MCD Entertainment will be my review on Bojack Horseman's first season. Horseman back in September, I was blown away by the fact that Netflix's first adult animated series was able to rise to its occasion and become one of the greatest adult animated series, in my opinion, of all time. I think that the show is able to perfectly balance its humor and really emotional undertones with really complex three-dimensional characters that are just enjoyable to watch, along with really interesting plots, and just making for a really good time. Looking back on the series now, many of the episodes have garnered high IMDb scores, and the seasons have garnered wonderful Rotten Tomatoes scores. However, both fans and critics have kind of agreed that the first season of the series isn't the best. Although it does lay some great groundwork for the rest of the series, and the second half is noticeably better than the first one, gaining more emotional overtone. The first few episodes are a bit of just trying to find its footing and setting up the characters and setting. And I would say it does a really good job at that, and be sure not to let just the first couple episodes deteriorate you from watching this incredible series. Also, spoiler alert for the first season of Bojack Horseman. For a quick summary of the premise, Bojack Horseman is about the titular character, Bojack Horseman, a horseman who was the star of a 90s ABC sitcom, Horsing Around. He is currently an alcoholic, self-loathing has-been who's hoping to revitalize his career by writing a memoir. Joining him in their own adventures are his memoirist Diane Nguyen, his house guest for several years now, Todd Chavez, his on and off girlfriend and agent, Princess Carolyn, and his former enemy turned boyfriend of Diane, Mr.Peanutbutter. I believe that the main theme of Season 1 is beginnings, a suitable theme for the first season of a show. But if we think about it, we see Bojack try to make a new beginning for himself in Hollywood, or as it's later known as Hollywoo, by writing the memoir. Diane and Mr. Peanutbutter get married and begin their married life together. It's the beginning of Princess Carolyn getting Bojack jobs finally, the beginning of her trying to find love, and most importantly, the beginning of Bojack trying to become a better person. Something that he continuously tries to and fails at and continues to try again at throughout the entire show. The main overarching plot of Season 1 is Bojack's memoir, and I think that it's a good enough cohesive storyline that's able to keep the season together and chugging along, even if it wasn't as prevalent in other season storylines. I do think that the season allows for some great relationships between Bojack and every other main character. However, other than maybe Mr. Peanutbutter and Diane, who are still a bit lacking in what I would like from their relationship, are a bit underdeveloped. However, I do think that this season has some great supporting characters such as Neil McBeal the Navy SEAL, Pinky Penguin, and lots of others, and I think they all really do have great additions to the cast. Now, I'll just be going through each episode individually and just give my quick thoughts on that before giving a quick review on each character, and then just a cohesive, all-together review on the season. Other than finales, pilots have to do the most work in the television world. They must set up the premises for the series, introduce the characters, settings, possible smaller seasonal storylines, have the plot themselves that makes sense for a pilot, and keep the audience engaged enough so that they'll keep watching the series. My personal first impression of Bojack Horseman may have been a bit tainted, as I'd seen reviews and a few spoilers about the show, so I did know that it would get a lot better. That being said, though, the pilot episode got its job done. However, each character was a bit off, to be honest, especially Mr. Peanutbutter. He seemed more passive-aggressive and acted more of an anti-hero to Bojack, which he really isn't later in the season. However, I do think this episode does do a really good job at the introduction of Diane, and it just feels so climactic and rewarding. Like, she is Bojack's ticket to fame if he can keep holding on to her throughout the series. And I also think the twist of her being Mr. Peanut Butter's girlfriend was really well done and sort of shocking to the audience, as you were hoping maybe that Bojack and Diane could get together. Maybe they could have had a better relationship if it wasn't for that middleman in between them. The creator of Bojack Horseman, Raphael Bob Waxberg, said on the Season 1 DVD that they made the second episode of Bojack more of a traditional TV episode, just in case they would have to go to cable television for the show. And I think that it works very well with that. Yes, it has a very self-contained plot. There are many parts of it don't come up into other episodes. And yes, it doesn't really have too much of the other characters and their storylines and how they're going through life. However, I do think that this does make a really hilarious and really thought-provoking 26 minutes that make you really have a good feel of how Bojack Horseman can handle its comedy. And now, I wouldn't say that there's too much substance in this episode. However, I will say that it really does have a good theme with celebrating people, and also I do think that Neil McBeal, the Navy SEAL, makes for a really good addition to the cast. I don't believe there are any bad episodes of BoJack Horseman. However, I would say that Prickly Muffin is one of its weakest. I do think that it serves as a good introduction for Sarah Lynn and really showing her story as becoming a child star turned a sex symbol. However, I believe that this episode feels more like Family Guy or one of its sort of rip-offs being raunchy for the sake of being raunchy. And I don't really enjoy that. I don't really think that's how BoJack is as a show, but I still do think that this episode's worth a watch just for the introduction of Sarah Lynn and how she is such an intriguing and complex character. Zoe's and Zelda's feels like more of a BoJack episode just meant to be there and advance the plot forward, and it doesn't really have a strong, self-contained story. I do think that Todd's space opera is really important. However, whenever I think of Zoe's and Zelda's, I don't usually think of that part of the episode. However, I really do think that Zoe's and Zelda's give some good insight into Todd's character and how BoJack's constant negativity affects Todd, and how that is really what's pushing him back from reaching his full potential as he internalizes that feedback so much. And I think that also showcases how he works with Mr. Peanut Butter and how he can work better with that support from Mr. Peanut Butter, even if that support is sometimes misplaced. And I also do think that Margot Martindale's introduction was really fun, and she's just a fun character in general, so can't hate the episode that introduced her. In my opinion, Live Fast Diane Nguyen feels like an episode that's a bit ahead of its time. As in, if it was in a season such as Season 4 or Season 5, or even Season 3, I feel like it would have been able to really be a better episode in showcasing how Diane's family is abusive towards her. However, being stuck in that Season 1 and sort of the Season 1 format, and how the episodes are structured and everything, I think it kind of makes for a bit of an underwhelming, kind of boring, overlong episode. I think that it's nice to see how similar Bojack and Diane are, about how they both come from abusive families and how they both want the validation from them, even if they don't need it from them, because they know that they are above their family. Our A story is a D story feels like the beginning of the change in Bojack Horseman as a series, where it gains more of an emotional core and serious overtones, dealing with more serious issues and everything. I think that it really showcases a good contrast in between Bojack and Mr. Peanut Butter, as they both are kind of the same, being that they are both washed up 90s sitcom actors, but seeing how they both deal with that in everyday life, and seeing how they're both such different people, is really interesting to see. I also really like how, at the end, where Bojack calls Diane, just being completely emotionally vulnerable, I really think that scene is a really well done scene, making you care for Bojack. I think also seeing how Mr. Peanut Butter didn't respect Diane's wishes, being all quiet and everything, and still completely broadcasting their engagement to the world. And I think that it really does make you wonder about Bojack and Diane, and how if Mr. Peanut Butter and Diane really are good for each other. For me, Say Anything is really a turning point in Bojack Horseman. This is the first Princess Carolyn focused episode, and it really does a great job of making you care about her and how she views her life at the end of the episode. Spending her 40th birthday alone, at work, in a relationship, no kids, and still at the same position she was at years ago. That moment when she stares out the window is probably one of my favorite scenes of the season, just showing how emotionally vulnerable at that moment Princess Carolyn was, and how they really were able to make you care about her, even in just that one episode. I think this is the first truly amazing episode of Bojack Horseman that makes you confident that it will be a good series. The Telescope, like Say Anything, is a truly amazing episode of Bojack Horseman, and television in general. The episode is really split into two, a flashback to the late 80s and early 90s horsing around days, and Bojack visiting sick Herb in modern days. And these two parts perfectly showcase the friendship and fallout of Herb and Bojack. When Bojack doesn't stand up for Herb in the horsing around days, it really does show Bojack making his truly first selfish mistake in the show, a trend that would tragically continue throughout the series and his life. This episode is usually most remembered for being the first use of the F word, a word that the show will only use once a series in to showcase a truly broken relationship, and this one really does pack a punch. Essentially, when Bojack asks for forgiveness after a nice visit with a dying Herb, he refused to forgive him. Most importantly, though, I don't think Herb needed to forgive Bojack. I think this was a really well shown through Herb's monologue. Not one pity visit does not make up for years of ghosting Herb and just not being there as a friend. Bojack taking the telescope from Herb, in my opinion, really showcased how Bojack was trying to take the last part of their friendship that they'd managed to salvage in this little visit and really just tried to throw it away, since Bojack did not get the validation that he always craves. That is again shown really well in the penultimate episode of the season. Say Anything might have been the moment that I thought Bojack Horseman was going to be an amazing show, but this was the episode that made me know that Bojack Horseman was already an amazing show. Force Majeure is a decent episode, but I think quality is affected from coming off of two really good episodes, Say Anything and The Telescope. Force Majeure is essentially an episode where Diane and Mr. Peanutbutter get married, and I do think that how the episode is formatted, going day by day until their wedding day, is a really interesting concept. However, it does limit the interactions between characters to more be one scene and not really get a lot of like those really nice monologues that we got in like Say Anything and The Telescope. I do think that this episode had a lot of potential with it being about Diane and Mr. Peanutbutter getting married, but I feel like, at least in my opinion, that it kind of lost a lot of that, being more focused on Bojack's attempt to sabotage the wedding, which was interesting, but I really do wish that they were able to give us more of Diane and Mr. Peanutbutter and seeing how they thought about their relationship. Especially with Diane knowing that she is now the third wife of Mr. Peanutbutter, and knowing maybe she's not good enough for him, and really showcasing how she's so scared that she would continue to want to get the wedding pushed up. We get a little bit of that with Mr. Peanutbutter being worried near the end talking to Todd, but I really wish that we got more of that, and that we got to see a lot more of both their insecurities about this and not knowing how to handle such a big change in their lives. But ultimately, this episode was kind of fun. It was an introduction of Vincent Adultman and Roxy, which was, I both enjoy both those characters. So ultimately, this episode's still definitely worth the watch. When I think back on season 1 of Bojack Horseman, I rarely think about One Trick Pony. Yet whenever I watch the episode, I really thoroughly enjoy it. I think this episode, along with Bojack Hates the Troops, are the funniest episodes of the seasons, and I think mostly combining it to filming the D story at Mr. Peanutbutter's house was a really interesting idea, and allowed for a lot more direct character interactions just within a short amount of time. Naomi Watts is a great guest star, and so is Quentin Tarantino, and I think the bi-monthly basket of snacks really is a good way to culminate this episode, knowing how much Bojack really worked for it, and seeing just how everything ended up being packed in a way where Bojack and everyone else on the crew doesn't really get anything out of it. However, I did like seeing the interactions between Bojack and Diane once Bojack read the memoir, which didn't paint the perfect picture of Bojack that Bojack wanted to see of himself. Diane leaking the memoir to increase buzz is a great showcase how Diane will do whatever she believes is right. And it really is shown again in episodes such as Hank After Dark and Commence Fracking, where what she believes right does triumph over the thoughts of others, whether it is morally right or not. No, I really do think this episode serves as a good setup to the penultimate episode, Downer Ending, which I'll be talking about next, and I think it's a rather underrated Bojack Horseman episode in general. Downer Ending begins the trend of critically acclaimed, emotionally heavy penultimate episodes of Bojack Horseman. Even if Downer Ending doesn't hold up against all the others, it is still one of the best episodes of Season 1, and probably in the top 20 episodes of Bojack Horseman in general. This is the traditional, or I guess untraditional, drug trip episode, where different styles of animations, quick segments relating to the main theme, and a more non-linear structure. However, the drug trip really doesn't begin until halfway through, which is kind of disappointing. Where in the first half, Bojack, who's unhappy about the way his book portrayed him, tries to write his own book in a week with the help of Todd, Sarah Lynn, and some drugs provided by Doctor Who. The first half is enjoyable, seeing how silly they all act. However, it is still a bit underwhelming for a penultimate episode, having seen all of them now. The second half is where the episode truly does thrive, though. There are several scenes recounting Bojack's past traumas, such as when his mother tries to force Bojack into singing the Lollipop song, and the trauma he's caused others, such as with Sarah Lynn growing up, becoming the kind of crazy person she is today. My favorite part of this episode, however, is when Bojack thinks of his life with Charlotte in Maine. It shows just how nice their life might have been, and what Bojack really wanted in life after being famous in Hollywood. I think that seeing the scene is perfectly showing Bojack's true inner desires, and is a perfect setup to the following penultimate episode, with Kate from LA, where I won't try to spoil it, but I'll say that that happy ending that Bojack wanted certainly does not happen. However, this episode is, again, probably most known for having the infamous scene where Bojack begs Diane to tell him he's a good person at the Ghostwriters Convention, and she just can't bring herself to say it. It is one of the most honest scenes that make you think if Diane was responsible for saying it, which, at least what I believe, she ultimately wasn't. We end up getting back to this theme about how Bojack wants validation from people, even when they shouldn't and don't have to give it to him. I would say that this episode is worth the watch just for that last scene, and it is a perfect end to Bojack's first penultimate episode. Leader is a really nice ending that is able to perfectly wrap up the first season and set up the second season of Bojack Horseman. It's a more plot-driven episode, which deals with a few plot lines such as Secretariat and Halloween in January, and altogether, Later does move pretty quickly, especially comparing it to episodes like Downer Ending and One Trick Pony. The finale shines the most in its ending again, showing Bojack returning to the planetarium, where he and Herb promised to meet again before he was fired, with his Golden Globe having received the role of Secretariat, and having someone tell him that he's his hero, looking out on LA. With the quick scenes of many of the characters we met this season, and seeing them all be happy, it's a really nice way to end off the first season of Bojack Horseman, and just set up as a very hopeful thinking on what the second season can bring, and hopefully the future for all these characters.
I really wanted you to like me, Diane.
I know.
Well, that was the first season of Bojack Horseman. I really enjoyed it. Hopefully, if you've seen it, you did too. And if you haven't, then I hope you will enjoy it too. So, before this video is over, I'm just going to do a quick review of each character and how I think they were done during the season. To be completely honest, Mr.Peanutbutter didn't do too much this season, other than support other characters. I mean, him and Diane do get married, which is a pretty important moment in the grand scheme of things, but it really isn't an arc or a moment of growth. I would say that you do get a good sense of his character, though, and his relationship with Diane, Bojack, and Todd. And I guess that's about it. Princess Carolyn pretty much had one episode this season, which was Say Anything. And I think it does a great job with developing her character. I won't talk too much about that just because I already did a review of that, but I will say that her relationship with Vincent Dontman, shown later in the series, really shows how much she wants to live badly, and she'll go about just for anyone, including possibly 3 children in a trench coat. I also think showing her rivalry with Vanessa Gecko was really interesting, showing how Vanessa Gecko seemingly has everything together, a perfect family, a perfect life, and she's still doing just as well as Princess Carolyn in the work world. I think that it really showcases how much Princess Carolyn wants that, but can't get it, and I do think that her beating out Vanessa Gecko does really showcase how maybe Princess Carolyn can be a good agent. Todd doesn't have too much of an arc here either, other than his space opera, which showcases how Todd does have a lot of potential, but his low self-esteem and Bojack's constant put-downs keep him away from getting there. That's also really showcased well in how he continues to stay at Bojack's house on his couch and doesn't really go for anything more, despite him probably being able to. I think that it does showcase him working well with Mr.Peanutbutter with PB Living, and how Todd really does benefit well from that really positive energy. Bojack and Diane's relationship is undoubtedly one of the most important aspects of Season 1. I believe that their upbringing, fears, and beliefs are shown well in this season, and we get to see the good, kind, supportive side Diane, the insecure, worried, and self-despising side, and the vengeance-hungry, stubborn, and angry side Diane. And all 3 of these mixed so well together make up a really 3-dimensional, interesting character. I think that it really does showcase how Diane is very similar to Bojack, except Diane is so much more hopeful about the world, and throughout the series we really see how a lot of that chips away from her, and how she still doesn't lose that main spark, but definitely a lot of the work that she has done towards it kind of fades away. And I think that Diane is really interesting in that fact that Diane should be in most other shows sort of like that perfect character who does everything right, but yet Bojack Horseman showcases a really raw version of her where she does make mistakes, she does do bad things, and she does try to get back up from it. Bojack Horseman this season seems to be beginning his journey of trying to become a better person, although he is not fully there yet, still being self-loathing, selfish towards his friends, and really just wanting validation even when he doesn't deserve it. We get a lot of background information on Bojack's sourcing around days, how that affected him as a person, and how he affected others during that time. And I do believe that Diane coming into his life and him wanting to appear as a good, nice, hard-working person for his book to make everyone love him as sort of like his character on Horsing Around was a really interesting idea and really made Bojack begin that journey himself. Although, once again, he does fall back into those traps by the end of the season, and you really do see that ugly, mean side of Bojack. I do think that, again, Bojack and Diane's relationship was really interesting, and Bojack's side of that was really well done, showing how he really does want to be a better person, especially with Diane, knowing that she appears as this perfect person who can make his life and all his problems go away. But I do think that Bojack does not want to take all that ugliness of himself and realize that he has all that. And I do think that this season, again, sort of really sets up the second season and how his refound fame will affect him, and how if he'll fall back into those traps that we saw in Horsing Around. Well, that is all I have to say on the first season of Bojack Horseman. I would say, once again, it really does set the groundwork for a really phenomenal series, but it still does have its struggles. It doesn't have a perfect tone and everything, but I do definitely think that... Again, thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, then please like and subscribe, and press the notifications bell so that you can be notified whenever I post a new video, and check out my other reviews on this channel. And I just hope everyone has a great day. Thank you so much again.